Welcome to Occult Archives, where we take a deep dive into some of history's most mysterious and, misunderstood texts.
Misunderstood is a good word for it.
Today, we're taking a look at, it's P.D. Ouspensky's work, The Symbolism of the Tarot, Philosophy of Occultism in Pictures and Numbers.
Right.
It was originally published back in 1913.
1913.
And thankfully, it's been thoughtfully translated for us by A.L. Pagaski.
Yeah, through Global Gray.
Through Global Gray, yeah. Now, when you hear tarot, you probably think about, I don't know, like shuffling cards, having a bit of fun, maybe getting a glimpse into the future or something like that.
Fortune-telling, all that, yeah.
Fortune-telling, exactly. But, our deep dive today is going to be a bit different.
Yeah, we're going deeper, looking at the philosophical side of things.
Yeah, we're going to explore Ouspensky's idea that the tarot is way more than just a deck of cards.
It's a whole system of thought, a way of looking at the world, you could say.
He calls it a code of Hermetic symbolism, which sounds pretty intense, doesn't it?
It does, and that's what makes it so fascinating.
Exactly. So, are you ready to decode this with me?
I am, absolutely. It's always a pleasure to dive into Ouspensky's work. It's so rich, so thought-provoking.
What I find really striking is how he basically says that occult philosophy and symbolism are like two sides of the same coin.
Right, like you can't really have one without the other. It's like he's saying that to understand the occult, you need to be able to read the language of symbols.
And that's not something you just pick up overnight, is it?
No, it definitely requires a certain way of thinking, a special cast of mind, as he puts it.
It's not just about, memorizing definitions or anything like that.
It's more about developing your intuition, your ability to see the hidden connections between things.
It's about nurturing that sense of symbols he talks about.
Exactly. It's about understanding that symbols are like keys that unlock deeper levels of meaning, both in the world around us and within ourselves.
And the tarot, according to Ouspensky, is like a master key in a way.
Yes, it's a potent tool for cultivating that symbolic sensitivity, for learning to read this esoteric language.
So to even begin to, approach his perspective, let's start with the basics. What exactly is the tarot as Ouspensky sees it?
Well, he begins by laying out a familiar structure, the one you probably already know. The tarot deck, he explains, has 78 cards in total.
Okay, 78 cards.
And then he compares it to something we're all likely familiar with. Ordinary playing cards.
Right, like a deck of cards you'd use for poker or something.
Exactly. So picture your standard 52-card deck, but then add a knight to each of the 4 suits.
Okay, a knight to each suit.
Yes, so that would be scepters, which we usually know as clubs.
Right, scepters, clubs.
Then cups, which are hearts.
Hearts.
Swords, which are spades.
Spades.
And pentacles or discs, which are usually diamonds, though he mentions that pentacles and discs are often used interchangeably.
Interesting. So those extra knights bring the total to 56 cards.
That's right. 56 cards, just like that.
So far, so good. It's the familiar territory of suits and court cards that we might see in any regular card game.
Yeah.
But then comes the twist, right?
Exactly. The tarot doesn't stop there. It adds another 22 numbered cards, and these are the ones with really powerful symbolic names.
Ah, so that's what brings us to the full 78.
Precisely. And these 22 cards are the ones that really take the tarot beyond just being, a game.
So what are these special cards called?
Well, we have the Magician at number 1.
A magician, okay.
Then the High Priestess at 2.
The High Priestess.
The Empress at 3.
The Empress.
The Emperor at 4.
The Emperor, okay.
The Chariot at 5.
The Chariot.
The Lovers at 6.
The Lovers.
The Hierophant at 7.
The Hierophant, okay.
Strength at 8.
Da-da.
The Hermit at 9.
The Hermit.
Wheel of Fortune at 10.
The Wheel of Fortune.
Justice at 11.
Justice.
The Hanged Man at 12.
The Hanged Man.
Death at 13.
Death, all right.
Temperance, which he also refers to as time, at 14.
Temperance or time?
The Devil at 15.
The Devil.
The Tower at 16.
The Tower.
The Star at 17.
It's just star.
The Moon at 18.
The Moon.
The Sun at 19.
The Sun.
Judgment at 20.
Judgment.
And finally, the World at 21.
The world, okay. So 22 cards, each with a name that feels, I don't know, like almost archetypal. It definitely suggests that there's something deeper going on here than just, trumps in a card game.
Yes, absolutely. It points to a whole other level of meaning, a symbolic dimension that goes way beyond simple entertainment.
And this is where Ouspensky brings in the intriguing concept of an Egyptian hieroglyphic book.
Right. He mentions this theory, which quite a few tarot scholars have explored.
Okay, what is this theory?
Well, the idea is that this 78-card deck we know as the tarot is actually, in a sense, a representation of the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic book of 78 tablets.
Wow, an Egyptian connection. But hold on. The tarot, as we know it, pops up in Europe in the late 14th century, right?
Yes, that's when it first appears on the historical record, at least in Europe. And it's often linked to Spanish gypsies.
So that seems like a pretty big leap from ancient Egypt. How does Ouspensky make sense of this historical puzzle?
While he acknowledges that the origins are murky, he points out that during the medieval period, there was this tendency to create these big synthetic symbolic systems like Raymond Lully's Ars Magna, for example.
Okay, so the tarot could be seen as part of that trend.
Exactly. But he also notes that similar symbolic systems existed in other cultures, in places like India and China, which suggests that the tarot's roots might be even older and more widespread than we think.
So maybe not just a medieval European invention after all.
Right. He even hints at potential connections to those ancient mystery schools and the initiations in ancient Egypt, though he admits that the exact origins and the original intentions of the creators remain a mystery.
A mystery, huh?
Hmm?
Sounds like our kind of territory here on Occult Archives.
It certainly does. But the crucial point for Ouspensky is this. Regardless of the historical uncertainties, he believes that the tarot represents the most complete code of Hermetic symbolism we have.
Okay, so we're not just talking about a deck of cards that, happen to acquire symbolic meaning over time. Ouspensky is saying that it was deliberately designed as a symbolic system from the very beginning, even if we don't know exactly when or by whom.
Exactly. It was created with a purpose to embody and transmit a specific kind of knowledge.
And this brings us to his metaphysical interpretation, right?
Mm-hmm.
The idea that the tarot is something quite different from just a deck of cards used for games. What does he mean by that?
Well, this is where things start to get really interesting. Ouspensky divides the tarot into those three groups we discussed. The 21 numbered cards, the single card 0, and the 56 suit cards.
Okay, those three groups.
And he suggests that the 0 card, the Fool, actually acts as a bridge between the first group, the numbered cards, and the third group, the suit cards.
A bridge between them. Interesting.
And here's the really mind-bending part. He proposes that all 56 cards of the third group, the suit cards, are actually equal in value to that single 0 card, the Fool.
Hold on. One card is equal to 56 others. How does that even work?
I know, it sounds strange, right? But he uses this really cool geometric analogy to help us visualize it.
Okay, I'm all ears. Let's hear this analogy.
Imagine the 21 numbered cards arranged in the shape of a triangle, with 7 cards on each side.
Okay, a triangle of numbered cards.
Right in the center of this triangle, picture that single 0 card, the Fool, representing a central point.
So the Fool is at the heart of the triangle.
Exactly. Now, surrounding this whole triangular structure is a square, and the square is made up of the 56 suit cards, with 14 cards on each side.
A triangle inside a square with a point at the center. Okay, I'm picturing it. What do these shapes represent in Ouspensky's metaphysical framework?
Well, the triangle, for him, represents God the Trinity, or maybe more broadly, the world of ideas, what philosophers sometimes call the noumenal world.
The noumenal world, the realm of pure thought and spirit.
Right. And the central point, the Fool, symbolizes the human soul, our individual consciousness.
So the soul is at the center, connecting to the divine realm.
Exactly. And the square, made up of those 56 suit cards, represents the visible physical world, the world we perceive with our senses, the phenomenal world.
Okay, so the square is all this stuff we experience around us. I'm starting to see how this all fits together. Now, what's the key insight Ouspensky wants us to grasp from this arrangement?
The crucial point is this. That central point, the soul, is potentially equal in significance to the entire square, to the whole physical world.
Wow, that's a powerful statement.
It is, isn't it? It suggests that the world we perceive out there, all this physical reality, isn't actually separate from us. It's contained within our consciousness, created in our soul.
So the world is, in a sense, a reflection of our own inner being.
That's the idea. And he takes it a step further by saying that the soul itself, that central point, is dimensionless within the world of spirit, that triangle we talked about.
Dimensionless in the world of spirit. So it exists on a different level entirely.
Exactly. It's not bound by the same limitations as the physical world.
This is definitely a different way of looking at reality than what we're usually taught.
It is, and Ouspensky argues that a concept this complex and sophisticated couldn't have just come from, simple folk wisdom.
Right. It points to a deeper origin for the tarot.
He even mentions H.P. Blavatsky, that prominent figure in the occult world.
Oh, Blavatsky, the founder of Theosophy.
He says that she was interested in the tarot and suggests that she might have even studied it.
So the tarot was on the radar of serious occult thinkers.
It was, and this adds another layer to its significance.
Now, Ouspensky doesn't just see the tarot as this isolated system. He connects it to a broader context of what he calls the Hermetic sciences.
Right. He emphasizes that to really understand the tarot, you need to have a grasp of the Kabbalah and alchemy.
Kabbalah and alchemy, two of those classic pillars of Western esotericism.
Exactly. He sees the tarot as a kind of summary of these Hermetic sciences, which also include astrology and magic.
So the tarot is like a microcosm of these four interconnected systems.
Precisely. It's a way of accessing their key principles in a concentrated form.
Now, when we talk about Hermetic sciences, we're talking about a tradition that goes back to the mythical figure of Hermes Trismegistus. What exactly do these sciences encompass, according to Ouspensky?
Well, he describes them as a system of psychological investigation, a way of exploring the nature of humanity in relation to both the noumenal world, the world of spirit, and the phenomenal world, the world of physical reality.
So it's about understanding ourselves and our place in the cosmos.
Right, and the methods used in these sciences, like the Hebrew alphabet and Kabbalah, the alchemical processes, the astrological symbols, the spirits in magic, were all essentially veils.
Veils, what do you mean by that?
They were ways of concealing the deeper truths from those who weren't initiated.
Okay, so it wasn't just about the literal practice of, transmuting lead into gold or summoning spirits.
Not at all. Ouspensky makes it clear that those were symbolic representations of inner processes.
So what was the true alchemist really seeking?
Well, the true alchemist, he says, was actually seeking the gold within the human soul, what in the New Testament is called the kingdom of heaven, or in Buddhism, nirvana.
Inner transformation, spiritual awakening.
Exactly. And the true astrologer wasn't just charting the stars, but was actually talking about the constellations and planets within the soul, representing different aspects of consciousness.
It's like they were using this outer language to describe an inner reality.
That's exactly it. And the true Kabbalist sought the name of God, not in some external text, but within the depths of the human soul and in the fabric of nature itself.
So these weren't separate disciplines, but rather different ways of approaching the same fundamental truths.
Precisely. Ouspensky emphasizes that anything you find in alchemy, for example, can be interpreted through a Kabbalistic or astrological lens, and the underlying meaning will always be psychological and metaphysical.
They're all different languages speaking to the same core reality.
Exactly. And he introduces this really interesting Kabbalistic concept, the idea of the enchanted circle of our ordinary conceptions.
The enchanted circle, what's that about?
Well, it's this idea that our everyday way of thinking actually prevents us from seeing the world in itself, the true nature of reality. And the Kabbalah, he says, is an attempt to break through this circle.
To see beyond the illusions.
Exactly. And one of the key elements for the Kabbalists is understanding the four letters of the name Jehovah, the Tetragrammaton.
Okay, the four letters, Yod, He, Vau, He. How do those relate to the world in itself?
Well, the Kabbalists believe that the world in itself is composed of four elements, four principles, and these are represented by those four sacred letters.
Four principles, four letters, it's all connected.
It is, and each letter has a specific meaning. Yod represents the active principle, the beginning, energy, the I.
Okay, Yod is the spark of creation.
Then He represents the passive element, inertia, the not I.
So He is like the space or potential for that creation to unfold.
Exactly. Vau symbolizes the balance between these two, the coming together of the active and passive principles, which creates form.
Vau is the form that emerges from that interaction.
Right. And finally, the second, He represents the result, the manifestation, the latent energy that's been realized.
The final, He is like the fruit of the whole process.
Precisely. And the core belief in Kabbalah is that everything, absolutely everything, is made up of these four principles, which are essentially the name of God, the Logos.
So by studying these letters, by understanding their interplay, We start to see the hidden structure of reality, the divine blueprint that underlies everything.
Exactly. And the more we can identify these principles in different things, the more we start to see the connections, the analogies between seemingly unrelated phenomena.
We start to see the unity of the world.
Right. And Ouspensky emphasizes that this is how our intellect grows, by recognizing these patterns, these echoes of the divine law.
So studying the Kabbalah is like a workout for the mind, expanding our awareness of the interconnectedness of everything.
Exactly. It's a path to higher consciousness.
And this Kabbalistic framework, as you mentioned, has parallels in alchemy and magic as well.
Absolutely. The 4 Kabbalistic letters correspond to the 4 alchemical elements: fire, water, air, and earth.
And in magic, those elements are represented by the 4 classes of spirits.
Right. The elves or salamanders for fire, the undines for water, the sylphs for air, and the gnomes for earth.
It's amazing how this fourfold pattern repeats across these different systems.
It is, isn't it? It points to some kind of fundamental structure underlying reality. And here's where the tarot enters the picture, mirroring these correspondences with its 4 suits.
Ah, so the tarot is like the visual representation of all this.
Exactly. The 4 suits of the tarot, scepters, cups, swords, and pentacles, each correspond to one of these elements and one of the classes of spirits.
So scepters are fire and elves, cups are water and undines, swords are air and sylphs, and pentacles are earth and gnomes.
That's right. Each suit represents a different aspect of reality, a different force at play.
And within each suit, the court cards also have these elemental correspondences, don't they?
They do. The king in each suit embodies the first principle, fire. The queen is water, the knight is air, and the page, or knave, is earth.
So even within the court cards, we see this fourfold pattern repeating.
Yes, and the numbered cards within each suit follow the same pattern. The ace is fire, the deuce is water, the 3 is air, and the 4 is earth. And then the cycle repeats through the rest of the numbered cards.
It's like a fractal pattern repeating at different levels of scale.
It is, and this highlights the interconnectedness, the way everything in the tarot reflects back to these fundamental principles.
Now, you mentioned earlier that the colors of the suits also have significance.
Right, Ouspensky points out that the black suits, sectors, and swords represent the active side of consciousness, things like energy, will, initiative, the subjective experience.
Okay, black is active, outward focused.
The red suits, cups, and pentacles, on the other hand, represent the passive side, receptivity, inertia, the objective aspect.
Red is passive, inward focused.
Exactly. And he also notes that the first 2 suits, scepters and cups, are generally associated with good, while swords and pentacles are associated with evil.
Good and evil in this context. What does he mean by that?
Well, it's not about good and evil in a moral sense, but rather about forces that are either aligned with our will or opposed to it.
So, scepters and cups represent forces we can control, while swords and pentacles represent forces that act upon us from the outside.
Well, that's a good way to put it. And each card, regardless of its number, indicates whether this good or evil influence is coming from within or without.
So each of these 56 suit cards is like a snapshot of those forces at play within human consciousness.
Exactly. They show us the different ways that these principles manifest in our lives, the different ways that our inner and outer worlds interact.
It's a pretty complex system when you start to think about all the different combinations.
Yeah, it is. But Ouspensky argues that this is what makes the tarot so powerful. It allows us to engage with these core principles of Kabbalah, astrology, alchemy, and magic without needing any elaborate tools or rituals.
So the tarot is like a portable laboratory for exploring these Hermetic sciences.
Exactly. It's a way of accessing these deep truths in a very direct and personal way.
So the 56 suit cards provide a kind of map of the human psyche through the lens of these Hermetic sciences. But Ouspensky says that the main interest of the tarot actually lies in the 22 numbered cards, the Major Arcana.
Yes, those are the real heart of the matter, the cards that hold the most profound symbolic meaning.
And what makes them so special?
Well, Ouspensky notes that a lot of the writing on the tarot focuses on interpreting the symbolic designs of these 22 cards. He even mentions that many occult authors have structured their entire works around the plan of the tarot, often without explicitly saying so.
So the tarot is like a hidden framework underlying a lot of cult thought.
Exactly. It's a kind of secret blueprint that's been influencing writers and thinkers for centuries.
Now, you mentioned earlier that the author Christian had a particular theory about the arrangement of the Major Arcana, linking it back to ancient Egyptian initiation rites.
Yes, Christian suggested that these 22 cards actually represent the hieroglyphic paintings that initiates would have encountered in Egyptian temples.
Okay, so each card is like a stage in the initiation process.
That's the idea. He described 12 columns on each side of these temple galleries, north and south, with 11 symbolic pictures in between. And he believed that these pictures were explained to the initiate in a specific order, revealing the secrets of initiation.
Like a guided tour through the mysteries.
Exactly. And he also theorized that the cards in the tarot are arranged in pairs.
Pairs. How did that work?
So card 1 is opposite card 22, card 2 is opposite card 21, and so on.
Okay, so each card has a mirror image, a counterpart.
That's right. And the idea is that each card helps to explain the other. You can't fully understand one without understanding its opposite.
So it's about seeing the world in terms of complementary opposites, a kind of yin and yang.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that things that seem to be opposed are actually interconnected, two sides of the same coin.
And this leads to what Christian called the unification of the duad, the transcending of duality.
Right. It's about moving beyond our usual way of thinking in terms of opposites and seeing the underlying unity that connects everything.
Can you give an example of how this pairing works in Ouspensky's interpretation?
Sure. He specifically mentions the pairing of card 10, the Wheel of Chance, or life, and card 13, death.
Life and death, the ultimate opposites.
Right, but by placing them together as a pair, the tarot challenges our usual way of seeing them. It suggests that they're not actually separate entities, but rather two aspects of a single process.
So life and death are interdependent, each one defining the other.
Exactly. You can't have one without the other. They form a whole that our limited minds struggle to grasp.
It's like that saying, to live fully, one must embrace death.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that life and death are part of a larger cycle, a cosmic dance.
And this idea of symbols pointing to deeper truths, but not having fixed meanings, is also central to Ouspensky's understanding of the tarot, isn't it?
Absolutely. He emphasizes that a symbol can only truly convey its meaning if it remains somewhat fluid, open to interpretation.
It's like a vessel that can hold different meanings for different people at different times.
Exactly. And as soon as you try to fix the meaning of a symbol, you limit its power. It becomes a mere sign, a label, rather than a gateway to deeper understanding.
So true occult symbolism, like true art, can't rely on ready-made, prepackaged meanings.
Right. It has to be alive, dynamic, constantly evolving.
It's about the journey, not the destination.
That's a good way to put it. And this brings us to Ouspensky's own approach to interpreting the tarot. He realized that the key lies in imagination rather than analysis.
So it's not about dissecting the symbols, but rather about allowing them to speak to us on a deeper level.
Exactly. So instead of trying to break down the cards into their individual components, he decided to create his own descriptive pictures, his pen pictures, to capture the essence of each card.
So he was using his imagination to create a new layer of symbolism.
Right, and he was drawing on the insights of other occult authors, both those who specifically wrote about the tarot and those who seem to have arrived at similar principles through different paths.
So he was synthesizing different perspectives,
Yeah.
creating a tapestry of meaning.
Exactly. He mentions figures like St. Martin, Eliphas Levi, Pappus, but also thinkers like Plotinus, Gichtel, Nietzsche, even M. Collins.
Wow, that's a pretty diverse range of influences.
It is, and it shows that the principles the tarot embodies are not limited to any one tradition or time period.
They're universal principles, speaking to something deep within human experience.
Exactly. And he even acknowledges that his own descriptions are subjective, open to different interpretations. He uses card 18, the moon, as an example.
The moon, that card of illusion and mystery.
Right. He says that there are many ways to understand that card, and he doesn't claim to have the definitive answer.
So it's not about dogma, but about exploration, about finding your own meaning in the symbols.
Exactly. And this brings us to a really fundamental question about the tarot itself. Is it a fixed doctrine, a set of teachings to be followed, or is it more like a method, a tool for exploration?
Is it a book or a machine, as he puts it?
That's the question. Is it something with a specific content, or is it something that can be used to create any content?
A pretty mind-boggling question. What's Ouspensky's take on this?
Well, he actually believes it can be both. He says that even though a book that can be read forwards or backwards isn't strictly definite in the usual sense, this very indefiniteness might be what defines it.
So its flexibility is its definition.
In a way, yes. He argues that the fact that we even question whether it's a method or a doctrine shows the limitations of our usual way of thinking, our tendency to get stuck in binary oppositions.
We want to put things in neat categories, but the tarot resists that kind of simplification.
It does. And Ouspensky says that the tarot actually contains and expresses every doctrine, every system of thought within our consciousness.
It's like a mirror reflecting back all the possibilities of the human mind.
Exactly. It represents nature in all its infinite potential meanings, which are constantly shifting and evolving.
So the tarot can't be rigidly defined because it's always in motion, yet it remains eternally the same in its capacity to reflect this dynamic reality.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's like a river that's always flowing, yet always remains a river.
Now, to help us navigate this complex and multifaceted system, Ouspensky uses a method of pairing the cards of the Major Arcana. What's the purpose of this pairing?
Well, he takes the 22 cards and pairs them up. Card 1 with card 0, card 2 with card 21, card 3 with card 20, and so on. The idea is that each card completes the meaning of the other, like two halves of a whole.
They illuminate each other, reveal hidden depths that wouldn't be apparent if we looked at them in isolation.
Exactly. So let's dive into some of these pairings and see what insights we can glean.
Okay, let's start with the first pair. The Magician, card 1, and the Fool, card 0.
The Magician, as Ouspensky describes him, is the Superman, the initiate, the one who's mastered the occult forces. He's the Kabbalistic Adam Kadmon, humanity in its perfected state.
The ideal, the archetype.
Exactly. And he's depicted with the 4 magic symbols: the scepter, the cup, the sword, and the pentacle, actively wielding them, using them to shape reality.
He's in control, a master of his craft.
Right. Now, the Fool, on the other hand, is the ordinary man, the uninitiated, seemingly unaware of his own power.
He's wandering blindly, not yet awake to his potential.
Right, but here's the interesting thing. Ouspensky points out that the Fool is also carrying those same 4 magic symbols, but they're hidden in his bag. He's not even aware of them.
So he has the potential, but he hasn't yet realized it.
Exactly. It's a reminder that even in our most ordinary state, we possess incredible power, even if we're not yet conscious of it.
It's like we're all carrying around this magical toolkit, but we haven't learned how to use it yet.
That's a good way to put it. And the journey of the tarot, in a sense, is about discovering those tools and learning how to wield them.
Now what about the next pair? The High Priestess, card 2, and the World, card 21.
This pairing is all about the essence of occultism itself, the mysteries that are revealed through initiation. The High Priestess, often associated with Isis, is the guardian of those mysteries.
She's the one who holds the keys, the one who guides us through the veil.
Exactly. She represents esoteric knowledge, the hidden wisdom that's only accessible to those who seek it out.
And the World, how does that fit in?
The World represents the culmination of that journey, the realization of the true nature of reality, the world as it is, in its noumenal aspect.
So it's about seeing beyond the illusions, the limitations of our everyday perception.
Right. Ouspensky says that this true understanding of the world is only possible after we've entered the temple, after we've gone through the process of initiation.
It's like we have to go through a kind of inner transformation to see the world as it truly is.
Exactly. And the High Priestess and the World together offer us a glimpse of that transformed vision.
Moving on to the next pair. The Empress, card 3, and Judgment, card 20.
The Empress, for Ouspensky, represents nature in its creative, life-giving aspect. She's the embodiment of springtime, fertility, abundance.
She's the mother goddess, the source of all creation.
Right. And Judgment represents the other side of that cycle, the process of death and rebirth, the constant renewal of life.
So it's not judgment in the sense of punishment, but rather in the sense of transformation.
Exactly. It's about the way that life constantly renews itself, even through death.
It's like the phoenix rising from the ashes.
That's a good analogy. Ouspensky describes this beautiful image of an ice plain melting away, and from the thawing ground, graves begin to open, and men and women emerge, reaching towards the sound of a trumpet call.
So death is not an end, but a transition to a new beginning.
Right. It's a necessary part of the cycle, a way for life to constantly reinvent itself.
Now, what about the Emperor, card 4, and the Sun, card 19?
The Emperor represents order, law, structure, the principles that govern the universe. He's the embodiment of the Tetragrammaton, the 4 letters of the divine name.